So let me get this straight. Carmelo Hayes, one of the most talented superstars on the Smackdown roster, loses his championship because of the actions of a bitter, washed-up veteran who can't accept that his time has passed. Are you kidding me right now? What we witnessed on Smackdown wasn't wrestling justice, it was highway robbery orchestrated by Tommaso Ciampa, and if you're not absolutely livid about what happened to Carmelo Hayes, then you haven't been paying attention to the systematic destruction of one of WWE's brightest futures. The 5th of December 2025 will go down as one of the most controversial nights in SmackDown history, and we need to talk about how Tommaso Ciampa just single-handedly altered the entire landscape of the brand with one calculated, selfish interference. But before we break down this absolute travesty, I want you to drop a comment right now. Do you think Ciampa was justified in what he did, or is this just another example of WWE protecting the wrong people? Let's get into it. The match itself was everything we expected and more. Carmelo Hayes vs Ilja Dragunov for the United States Championship, and let's be clear about something, Hayes has been carrying that title with the prestige it deserves. Every defense has been a showcase of athleticism, intelligence, and championship caliber performance. This man has elevated that championship to heights we haven't seen in years, and he was in the middle of doing it again against Dragunov. The intensity was off the charts from the opening bell. Dragunov, the mad Russian with nothing to lose, came at Hayes like a man possessed. We're talking about stiff strikes, brutal chops that echoed through the arena, and that unhinged aggression that makes Ilja one of the most dangerous competitors in WWE. But here's the thing, Melo was handling it. He was countering, he was staying one step ahead, using his speed and ring IQ to neutralize Dragunov's power advantage. Hayes hit that beautiful springboard clothesline that sent Dragunov to the outside, and you could feel the momentum shifting. The champion was in control, doing what champions do, adapting, surviving, and finding ways to win. He connected with a picture-perfect dropkick that had Dragunov reeling. This wasn't some squash match, this was a legitimate championship defense where both men were giving everything they had. And here's a question for the comment section, who do you think has the stiffer chops, Ilja Dragunov or Gunther? Drop your answer below because that comparison is about to become very relevant to our story. The near fall started coming fast and furious. Dragunov hit that devastating H-bomb knee strike that's ended countless matches, and Hayes kicked out at 2.5. The resilience of the champion was on full display. Then Hayes countered with nothing but net, his finishing corkscrew dive, and Dragunov somehow, got his shoulder up before the 3 count. This was championship wrestling at its absolute finest, 2 warriors leaving everything in that ring. But then the cancer that is Tommaso Ciampa decided to infect this match with his presence. The cameras caught him first, lurking at the top of the ramp like some kind of predator watching his prey, and you could see it in his eyes, that calculated malice that has defined his entire career. Ciampa wasn't out there to scout talent. He wasn't out there to watch a good match. He was out there with an agenda, and that agenda was to make sure Carmelo Hayes walked out without that championship. Now, let's talk about the history here because context matters. Tommaso Ciampa and Carmelo Hayes have had their issues, their confrontations, their battles for respect and positioning on the SmackDown roster. But what gives Ciampa the right, the audacity, to insert himself into a championship match that has nothing to do with him? This wasn't his moment. This wasn't his title opportunity. This was Carmelo Hayes defending his championship against a legitimate challenger. Hayes spotted Ciampa on the ramp, and you could see the distraction setting in. How could it not? When you've got a psychopath staring you down while you're trying to defend your championship, your focus gets divided. And in championship wrestling, a divided focus is a death sentence. Hayes tried to keep his head in the game, tried to maintain his composure, but Ciampa's presence was like poison seeping into the match. Dragunov, to his credit, or perhaps to his eternal shame, depending on how you look at it, capitalized on the distraction. As Hayes was jawing with Ciampa, telling him to get the hell out of there, Dragunov was recovering, regrouping, preparing for one final assault. The referee was trying to maintain order, but the damage was already done. The champion's concentration was shattered. Here's another question for you all watching. If you were the referee, would you have ejected Ciampa from ringside immediately, or would you have let him stay? I'm curious what you all think about WWE's officiating decisions. What happened next was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You knew it was coming, you could see the trajectory, but you were powerless to stop it. Hayes turned back toward Dragunov, trying to refocus on the task at hand, but the damage was catastrophic. Dragunov charged forward with that unhinged intensity, connecting with Torpedo Moscow, that devastating diving head, but that's like getting hit by a freight train. Hayes crumbled. The impact was sickening. And as Dragunov covered him for the pin, Ciampa just stood there on that ramp with the slightest hint of a satisfied smirk. 1, 2, 3. New United States Champion. And Carmelo Hayes' reign, a reign built on excellence, on proving doubters wrong, on elevating that championship, ended not because he was beaten fairly, but because a bitter veteran couldn't stand to see him succeed. The celebration was immediate and chaotic. Dragunov's music hit, the championship was handed to him, and he celebrated like he'd actually earned this victory legitimately. But did he? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. Ilja Dragunov is an incredible competitor, nobody disputes that, but this victory is tainted. It's stained by outside interference, by the actions of someone who wasn't even supposed to be part of this equation. And where was Carmelo Hayes in all of this? Flat on his back, staring at the arena lights, processing the reality that his championship reign had just ended not because of anything he did wrong, but because of forces beyond his control. The look on his face wasn't just disappointment, it was disbelief, it was rage, it was the realization that sometimes in WWE, talent and preparation aren't enough when politics and personal vendettas come into play. Let me ask you something, Wrestling Zone family, and be honest in the comments, do you consider Ilja Dragunov a legitimate United States champion after winning like this? Or does this victory have an asterisk next to it that will follow him for his entire reign? Ciampa, meanwhile, slowly backed up the ramp, his mission accomplished. He'd inserted himself into a match that had nothing to do with him and changed the entire trajectory of the United States Championship picture. The question now becomes, why? What was his motivation? Was this about personal animosity toward Hayes? Was this about wanting to position himself for a future title opportunity against Dragunov instead of Hayes? Was this about bitter jealousy toward a younger star who's accomplished more in less time? The answer is probably all of the above. Tommaso Ciampa has always been a complicated character, someone who operates in shades of grey, someone who justifies his actions through twisted logic and self-preservation. But this wasn't complicated. This was simple sabotage. This was a veteran who can't accept that the new generation is passing him by, so instead of earning his opportunities, he's stealing them from others. The Smackdown locker room has to be watching this and asking themselves, who's next? If Ciampa can interfere in a championship match with impunity, if he can alter the course of someone's career without consequences, then every single superstar on that roster is vulnerable. The precedent this sets is dangerous, and WWE management needs to address it immediately. But here's what really grinds my gears about this entire situation: Carmelo Hayes deserved better. He deserved the opportunity to defend his championship in a fair environment. He deserved the chance to prove once again why he's one of the best United States champions in recent memory. Instead, he got robbed. He got humiliated. He got screwed by someone who wasn't even part of the match. And now what? Does Hayes get an automatic rematch clause? Does WWE management step in and reverse this decision? Does Ciampa face any consequences for his actions? Or do we just accept this as wrestling politics as usual and move on like nothing happened? The scary part is that Dragunov, who should be celebrating the biggest victory of his Smackdown career, now has to carry the weight of knowing that his championship came with an asterisk. Every time he defends that title, people will remember how he won it. Every time someone mentions his reign, there will be whispers about legitimacy. That's not fair to Dragunov either, even if he's willing to accept the victory however it came. Here's my final question for all of you before we wrap this up. What should Carmelo Hayes' next move be? Should he demand an immediate rematch? Should he go after Ciampa first and settle that score? Drop your booking ideas in the comments. What we witnessed on SmackDown wasn't just a title change, it was a statement about how easily success can be stolen, how quickly momentum can be derailed, and how one person's selfish actions can have rippling consequences across an entire brand. Tommaso Ciampa forced this result, manipulated this outcome, and changed the championship landscape to suit his own agenda. The United States Championship now rests on the shoulder of Ilja Dragunov, but it got there through the interference of Tommaso Ciampa and at the expense of Carmelo Hayes' rightful reign. This story is far from over. The fallout from the 5th of December will echo through SmackDown for weeks, possibly months to come. Allegiances will be tested, rivalries will intensify, and somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, justice needs to be served. Carmelo Hayes was robbed. Plain and simple. And if you disagree, I want you to explain to me in the comments how this was anything other than a complete and total injustice. This is Wrestling Zone 1, where we tell it like it is, and what happened on SmackDown was absolutely infuriating. If you're as angry about this as I am, smash that like button, share this video with every wrestling fan you know, and subscribe if you haven't already because we're going to be following this story every single step